I can go on forever, acknowledging her accolades in her journey for equitable rights in and out of the classroom. However, I'm not the keynote speaker for this morning, so please stand on your feet as I present to you and introduce to others my friend and the person who has inspired me, Enid Lee.
Good morning. Buenos dias. I want a little more energy than that. Buenos dias. You can use any other language you want to say good morning to. That would be fine. Let's just fill the room with language, with voices, with warmth. Any other languages you want to say good morning in, just shout them out like a jazz ensemble. Let's do it. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am very happy to be with the CABE family again. It's been many years I've been coming to CABE, and it's wonderful to be with you today. I want to thank a number of people right away before I get on with what else I have to say. I want to thank Delma for her introduction. I want to thank Vanessa, Jan, Marsha, and David Valencia in particular, who helped me with my PowerPoint yesterday. He rescued this person who is clearly not a digital native to get things done. And also all the folks backstage who prepared me for this. I'm telling you, being backstage is like getting ready for a show in Hollywood. I'm telling you, what anxiety you feel, it is worth going through what is happening back there. The green room, the lights, the stage, it is amazing. Anyway, I'm here in one piece and delighted to be so. I believe that many of you were here yesterday. Can I just get a sense of who was here yesterday, who had the power, right? Yes. What an amazing experience. And it was amazing to be for a number of reasons. One of the things that caused my heart to dance with joy yesterday as I sat in the audience was the fact that every speaker yesterday brought up the issue of inequality, racism, injustice. People specifically spoke of the Stephen Clark killing and the funeral. And I'm telling you, when I was coming up from Santa Cruz yesterday, I thought to myself, am I going to have to come up here and dance around the topic and figure out how to bring it in? But I didn't. Everybody was talking about it. And in a way, it is a statement about CABE and its willingness to deal with what is relevant and to deal with what is on our minds and what challenges us. So I am very happy that we're here and that yesterday was what it was and that we all have the power. Who has the power? Okay, and it's people power. What I want to do for the next few minutes, and I'm keeping an eye on the time, because I have been duly warned that should I go over time, I will be stopped. It doesn't matter if it's in mid-sentence. So I'm definitely going to move on to the topic. There are two things I would like to do in the time allotted to me. And one has to do with helping you to develop or further extend a habit. Now, I know people have all kinds of habits, some that they want to discuss in private and in public, but I won't get into your business. What I want to do is to develop and encourage us to have this habit that this teacher had, who said, I check my systems for equity every time I enter the classroom. I check my systems for equity every time I enter my classroom. A second grade teacher in a workshop that I was doing 15 years ago said that. Now, I would consider that a habit. Would you consider it a good habit? Yes. In fact, it's a hard habit, but I think it's a habit that's worth cultivating, especially as we look at the EL, English Learner Roadmap. It's a way of helping us to get there. And so one thing that I hope will happen as a result of our time together is that we will develop the habit of checking our systems for equity every time we enter. Is it a classroom, a staff room, a department office, the Department of Education's office, wherever. Not only must that second grade teacher develop it, but all of us need to do that. All of us need to make that a habitual process by asking the question, who is missing? What are the gaps? What is the unequal treatment? Who has been excluded? And when this teacher said that, that's why I have a clock there, because she says she does it every time. Some of us in the room thought, oh, that's a bit excessive. That's a bit much. But if you think about it, because inequity is systemic, we actually have to have that regular, focused, habitual practice of asking what's missing, what are the gaps around race, gender, language, and so forth. And I hope you try it. If you're already doing it, keep doing it. I know it's not an easy habit to develop. When I try to do it myself, sometimes forget, but it does get me on the right track. And that's a habit to develop in tumultuous times. We are facing difficult challenges around power, language, equity, race, sexuality, gender, class, everything. It's as if the whole world sometimes is coming at us. And what I wanted to do, first of all, was to say there is a habit we can develop that will enable us to contend with these issues on a regular, manageable basis. That's the first thing. But the more exciting thing that I want to do today is to share with you an experience I had working in 3 school communities over the last year, where every member of the school community got together to work on equity together. Not the teachers on their own, not the instructional aides on their own, not the paraprofessionals on their own, but every single person in that school came together to work on equity 4 times during the day in professional learning and applying what they had learned. And they did it, as I say, during the day, not at a time when, you know, what I call the armpits of the afternoon, you know, when everybody's tired, when you're worn out, when people are going to pick up kids, when all of it is over, but in the full time of the day between 9 and 3. And I want to talk with you about that. So that's the first, that's the second and most important piece. Before I get to that, however, though, I want to say that our policy of the 58, which we have accomplished, which is a great victory, will benefit from equity work in order to make it happen. That passage of that legislation that opens up the possibility for multilingual opportunities. And then, of course, that practice of the EL roadmap will be used. As you know, by the end of this 4 days, 3 days together, everyone will know the EL roadmap by heart, right? Can you recite pieces of it? Who knows what the second principle is about? Come on. Loudly. Can I hear some sound? Do you not have it in your bag? By the end of this session, please, I'm going to do a quick quiz. Second thing. Okay. But my point is this, that this approach of focusing on equity individually and collectively will help us to accomplish the things that need to be accomplished in terms of our systems, in terms of the roadmap. We know that one of the things we want to do is to build on the cultural and linguistic assets that students bring to their education, and equity is essential to that. So this is relevant to that piece. Before we get to the actual experience with the 3 schools, let me just remind you that all the work we do around equity, policy, practice is focused on people. Equity is about people. People having a rich, fruitful, productive, healthy experience in schools. And that list there that you see suggests that people have different experiences in schools based on such identities and aspects of their lives, like the economic status, gender, class, and race, and so forth. Okay? So even though we have a wonderful roadmap, even though we have a fine policy, even though good intentions are there, we have to address the issue of equity, because policies do not reach every person in the same way. And so as we do our work together, as we talk about the roadmap, bring the children's faces to your mind. Bring the sound of their voices. Bring their names. Bring the texture of their skin. Bring the food that they bring to lunch to eat. Bring all of that, because that is what makes us keep going with the work. I have the wonderful experience of working in schools. I go into schools to actually do professional learning, and it is amazing. And I haven't been there for a year. I've taken a year to recover from all of that excitement after 50 years. And I'm telling you, not being in school this year, I am so lost. I walk by schools and I peep through the fences and wonder what they're doing and thinking of what it would be like to be there. So we who are blessed to be in schools have the things that keep us going around why we do work with equity, why we put policy into practice, because of people. And those people, we have to keep in mind how a society has dealt with people differently based on their various backgrounds. And why is that so? Why do we need to emphasize equity? Why do we need to talk about what has to be done differently for different groups of students? And it is because our society, this society, as many others, has been organized and continues to be organized, reorganized about systems that have elevated some and devalued others. And I want to say that because sometimes when things go wrong, when racist practices take place, when the English learners are not dealt with appropriately, when the systems that need to be in place are not in place, when teachers have not been prepared in the ways they need to be prepared to help them, we sometimes act as though people are doing this because they're just bad people. I would say not. It is more complex than that. And in fact, what enables me to do work about race and difference is that recognition that we live and work and continue to live and work in a society that is fundamentally structured unequally. You know, it's hard to hear that because we think, oh, everything we've got is because of merit. Everything is happening because, you know, it's just good. But actually, anti-racist work is the response to a racist system. Anti-sexist practices, anti-homophobic, those actually are positive things in the face of a structurally, historically structured society that is uneven. It makes me able to do the work. It makes me able to forgive myself when I engage in those practices myself. It makes me able to see how we can turn schools around when we understand that this is a structural question. And it is not a structural question that allows you to excuse yourself. It is a structural question excuse me, that explains why it is as it is. As you can see, that picture that shows us how the legacy of enslavement of both of African people and, as we were reminded yesterday, of Aboriginal people, or First Nations as we call them in Canada, is part of the story. So there's another picture that tells you how the history creeps its way into it. People have been devalued on the basis of race, culture, and so forth. and you know those posters, you're not seeing them for the first time, and I'm bringing them up to say that if we are to change what happens around equity, we have to understand the history that's there, right? And we have to look for the assets because many have been denied and devalued on the basis of it. The challenge is this: we did not make that history, but if we don't do something different, we are maintaining it. This is our chance to make a new history. So that's why equity has to be a part of the discussion about the English Learner Roadmap. That's why equity has to be part of the discussion about any legislation that comes into play in this state. It has to be a part of everything. That's why it needs to be that habit. And oh, okay. I'm glad you're in agreement. I know that this is a friendly crowd, but you don't have to agree with me if you don't want to. I won't start crying or throw things at you. I just want you to think about it and take it back, okay? Yes, so equity must be a piece of it. Now, what does equity look like? One of the things we know is that almost everybody has a different version of the word, right? And I just want to touch on what I mean when I say systems. When I say we have systems that we investigate, I call any arrangement that we have of our procedures, of our methods that cause things to be done. That's a system. Now, you might not consider it a system, but if I were to arrive from Mars at your school or at your classroom, and I looked at the way you called on kids, or I looked at the way you greeted kids, or I looked at how you allotted time for different things, or I sat in a board meeting at the school district and heard what budgets they had and what they put into things. If I looked at what time was spent on professional development, I could tell what your system is, okay? So that's what I mean by investigating all of our systems, right? And every one of us has systems. We might think, oh, I just do it, you know, but we have systems, and being conscious of those systems helps us to be more aware of what we're doing and to address inequity. Like when that teacher said, I checked my systems for equity, she was talking about the seating. She was talking about her selection of materials. She was talking about the way she reaches out to parents. She was talking about how she negotiates with other members of staff. She was talking about how she greets kids. So the other thing I want you to do as you go through this week, as you go back to school, as you do the ask, what are my systems? Stop, just close your eyes for a minute, but don't fall asleep. Just close your eyes for a minute. What are some of the systems that you work with and on and through every day? And again, give me a shout out. What are systems that you operate that are under your control? Can I hear you? Reading groups. What else? Pardon me? Bilingual education. What else? What are other procedures that you have control over? Behavior questions, right, okay. And what about some of those of you who have budgets? What about some of you who have money to decide what is spent on? Do we have some systems questions there? No? All the money people are gone, they came yesterday and whatever, okay. And I'm putting this out to say is that the way in which we are going to prepare for all of the students and make that roadmap possible is for all of the systems. Now, systems is one of the principles. Am I correct? Yes. So you better wake up and start looking at the principles, and systems is one of them. So checking on your systems to see who is there and who is doing what. Pardon me? Did I hear? Okay, all right. Okay. Oh, okay, I lost something there. Okay, so moving along with that, you can see how that newspaper from 1946 tells us that this question of equality in schools is something that's been ongoing. It addresses issues of Mexican children and their civil rights in education, and if we don't know the history, we cannot figure out how we can change it. So equity means doing what it takes to address the inequities past and present. And you can't do equity unless you name the inequity. You can't, conversations about equity cannot take place unless we identify what has been unequal and what continues to be unequal in the practice. And so a very quick way to do it, ask, what are the gaps? What are the exclusions? What are the omissions? What is the inequitable treatment of social groups in schools, society, and classrooms? When we start doing that, we will make a difference with what is taking place. I just wanted to be really clear that that's what it takes. And I'll just give you a very brief story. If you don't check yourself, you keep doing the same thing every day. Last week, I was getting together a set of books to distribute at a, believe it or not, a Black History Month in March. Some people celebrate Black History Month besides February. It helps to keep things going. And I collected all these books, and when I looked at them, I realized there were some gaps. They were all about Black people from different parts of the world. But none of them featured people of African descent who had any kind of disability. None of them featured any books that had people who were not straight. There were no lesbian, gays. I had missed out Bayard Rustin, who had done all that important work with Martin Luther King, all of that. I had missed out a lot. And so what I did, of course, I ran down to the bookstore and got the books that were missing and put them in there, right? Because if you are filling gaps, you have to fill the gaps along all lines: gender, race, gender expression, class, and so on, right? And it's not that hard once you're in the frame of mind to check, right? And remember, you don't omit these things because you're just mean or, malicious. You miss those things because what is in the mainstream and is in front of you keeps being in the mainstream and in front of you. And so we have to constantly check ourselves, right? I have amazing experiences where I have to keep checking myself. I'm in a restroom, and I look out, and the person in front of the mirror, I think to myself, oh my goodness, I'm in the men's restroom. And the woman, I was wrong. The woman turned around and said to me, because of the look on my face, no, I'm a woman. And so my face indicated to her that I had a fixed picture of what a woman is supposed to look like, right? Of course, I retreated into the bathroom, and hid there. But how long can a grown woman hide in the bathroom? You have to come out at some time. I was so embarrassed by my mistake, right? I mean, you have to come out. You've got to get to classrooms. But my point is this, that we are socialized to see and experience things in given ways, right? We have a picture of who is supposed to be where. We have a picture of who is supposed to be in an advanced placement class. We have a picture of who is supposed to be a principal. We have a picture of who is supposed to be whatever. We have a picture of who is supposed to be a successful EL person, right? But what we have to do as we check our systems, check ourselves, and constantly ask, what do I need to do to make more room in my mind? I was telling a friend about this embarrassment I had, and I said, well, maybe they should have bathrooms so that people like me wouldn't make silly mistakes like that. And she said, no, Enid, you know what you need? You need more room in your mind for who should be in the bathroom. And it is a really profound lesson in terms of the room we need to make in our minds for all of us. The room we need to make, right? We don't need extra rooms. We need more space up here to what is possible and for whom. So checking your systems for equity is a wonderful experience. Let me move on to say that when we check for equity, we accomplish equality as the goal. So all of those things that are described in the EL roadmap, that's equality coming into play, where English learners are developed, where they are challenged, where the academic experience is rigorous, where they're prepared for college, civic life, and anything that they want to. That's equality. And you get to it by equity measures, which means filling gaps, which means doing different things in order to address what's missing. Now, here we come to the story of the whole community that did equity work together. How many of you would say that your district has this as a mandate, as a goal, as something? All employees are responsible for the education of all students. If that is true in your district, would you stand? Okay. All right, we see a couple there. Okay, fine, thank you. And thank you very much. And the thing that got us moving in that district is that that is one of the district's principles. All employees are responsible for the education of all students. And you notice that in the English EL roadmap, that part of what is expected is that everybody will see English learners as their children. So, because of that, here is what happened in that district. And I'll just give you some high points of what we did and what resulted from the participation of the whole school. I was walking along with the principal of one of the schools, and he said to me, if we are going to be doing equity, then everybody has to be involved. And as you know, quite often what takes place, we have the teachers by themselves, right? Am I correct? Right? Is that how it works in your district? No? No? Yes, on a whole, right. But he said we're going to have classified, certificated, everybody, 2nd grade to 5th grade. We're going to have lunchroom supervisor. We're going to have campus monitor. We're going to have after-school people. And that in itself is a major shift in terms of what needs to happen if equity. So here's what happened. The whole school was divided into 6 cohorts, mixed. Excuse me, 2nd grade teachers, mixed with 5th grade teachers, mixed with lunchroom and so forth. That meant that some authority, principal, superintendent, had to make decision to redistribute 2 institutional resources. One was time and one was money, because people who were hourly waged were asked to come for a little longer time, and they had to be compensated. At least they should be. And then there was a massive amount of money spent on the substitute teachers to cover classrooms because we were working during the day. But I'm telling you, it was an amazing experience. And one of the things that I hope you'll try when you go back to school, and I know some superintendents are here, and I know some principals are here, and I know some people with deep pockets of money are here, so I'm putting it out now, right? But if you put your mind to it, like these 3 administrators, it can be done. And we brought all the 3 schools together. We brought all 3 schools, met on site, but they were broken up into cohorts of 15 or 16, and we met 4 times. In those cohorts, that was the first time some people in the school actually talked with each other. That was when some people knew each other's names. And an opening exercise that we had was this one here called Building an Assets Inventory. And if you notice, in that we have the student nestled in the heart of it, and then we have school, community, we have family, we have, excuse me, the community as part of who the student is. And you notice we also have some of the family names in languages other than English. Can you detect any from up there? Can you see? You can't. You can't. Some of them are in Tagalog, some of them are in Spanish, and so forth. So we came together, and one of the first things that happened was that every adult was able to express things that mattered to them, things that were valuable, things that they could do, things that were their assets. And as we did that, you could see people's feelings changing about each other and eventually changing about students. One of the key pieces was an exercise called, "What does equity mean to you?" And when I was asking for the answers, I said to them, why don't you give your answer in any language that's available to you? You don't have to give it in English. And so what happened was that the room was filled with Spanish, Tagalog, Hindi, Farsi, everything, because many of the paraprofessionals spoke languages other than English. And the difference between the way people came into the room and the way they left was like night and day, because there were the multilingual people who had often low status at the school, seen as experts, seen as having something to offer. And of course, many of the monolinguals would look in amazement as people would rattle off in many languages which we didn't understand what equity meant. And their shoulders were lifted, and you saw a transformation in their very physical being. In addition to that, people who had never asked paraprofessionals what they knew about different kids began to ask them, began to see them as sources of knowledge, began to value what they had to offer, and began to be in a place where we could be part and parcel of educating all the children. And if nothing else happened in that time, and many other things did, it was really important. So if you go back to your school, I'm sure you're going back at some point, but when you go back to your school and you're able to encourage everybody to be part of a conversation and use whatever languages they have, I would love to know what the results are. Moving on, we also looked at a number of domains for equity to be examined. We looked at pedagogy, content, assessment, climate, and purpose. And we found that every adult in that room had something to do with all of those. And I'm going to just very quickly flash through, because the clock is counting down, and I don't want to be cut off in mid-sentence. Some of the questions that we asked are in the set of slides, the set of cards that I developed and I have at the back for you. This is not an advertisement for the cards by any means, but just letting you know. This was a question: how can this lesson equip students to stand up for themselves and others in the face of racism, sexism, and other forms of injustice? That was just one question. And what would happen is that each member of the cohort would have the question and would work on it between sessions and come back with an answer. And some of the answers we got were amazing. For instance, a third-grade teacher said, well, I used that question and I helped a student whom she described as gender fluid to be part and parcel of my class. I just said, you have a right to wear whatever color clothes you want to wear, to play with whoever you want to play with, and she worked with students to do that. Another question, which you will find, I think, related to what we were told yesterday about content. What missing and incorrect information can I teach so that students can uncover through this lesson? The roots of racism and are in the absence or the incorrectness of information about groups of people. Some of that information is perpetrated through schools, and we have an opportunity to address that. Very interesting thing happened. The lunchrooms, the campus monitor and the fifth-grade teacher both chose that question. And together they said they wanted students to learn about the missing information about Mexicans in the United States. And so they worked on that. But what I'm trying to get at here is this, that meeting of the minds allowed our schools to become a community to support all students and to do equity work together. People asked to look at what they knew about their students' experiences, home languages, and so forth. We had a behavior question, and a person who supervised recess, because she took the idea of systems to heart, she said, I looked at who is constantly excluded in terms of recess, and I saw patterns of gender and race. the people who are particularly already heading to the prison pipeline. And she said, I'm intervening here. And so she did something differently with helping that student to figure out how to participate. There are wonderful stories of what we were able to do together, because somebody said, if we're doing equity, all members of our community need to do it, and everybody has knowledge that can help. The one that I can't get over is with the lunch lady. There are 900 children in that particular school, and yet she was able to keep an eye out for a student in special education. At one time, she used to point to what she wanted because she didn't speak. Over the course of the year, she stopped pointing, but she took the tongs and took the food out of the server. And when she said that to the first grade teacher, the first grade teacher said, oh, that means she's developing fine motor control that can help me teach her to write. So I want you to see how a lunchroom person is helping a first grade teacher see pieces of their children. That was the excitement of it. We had all kinds of wonderful revelations in those 4 weeks together. And I want them to be yours, because those are the things that can help us move further. And I'm just flipping through those issues of resources, representation, and so forth, very important as you do this work. I want to end by saying that when we think of things like racism, we need to not think of them as episodes. We need to think of them as systems that attack things like language, backgrounds, immigration status, and so forth. And because it's a system, we have to keep the habit of equity working on them. We can't give up. This is something I wake up to every morning. I say, Enid, expect racism, but do not accept it. It's sort of like a package in the mail, right? They come with it, but you don't have to take it. But you're not surprised that it's coming. You know, I don't have time to waste being alarmed, being distressed. It's coming because it's part of the system, but I'm not having it. I'm going to work against it. Another thing that I want to say is that as we do this journey, let us be joined with what I call the twin forces of hope and urgency. Hope when we have those stories from the school, urgency when we listen to all that is yet to be done, when we hear of the gaps, when we hear of the white supremacy, when we hear of the homophobia, when we hear those things. That's urgency. But we do not have to be distressed. We can be hopeful as we practice equity on a regular basis. And the last thing, in my last 2 minutes, this is another quote I have. Never get used to injustice. It is an unnatural condition. Even if you cannot remove the injustice today, continue to call it by its name, especially in these times when language is used to hide reality, when language is used to create fake universes. It is most important that when you see things that are unjust, even if you can't fix them, don't start calling them something else. No sugarcoating, because it is in the power of language that we can keep those realities alive and never give up the fight. Never give up the fight. Never give up the fight. Give me some chance back. Never give up the fight. Never give up the fight. Never give up the fight. Come on, never give up the fight. Because, one, you practice your habit. I want you to develop that habit. You can have what other habits you want. I'm not going to get into your business to find out what they are. But that habit of checking for equity, have that, develop it, use it. And the other one, embrace everybody at your school community, families, students, lunchroom supervisor, 5th grade teacher, media consultant, secretary, everybody, because there's a tremendous amount of knowledge in our communities, at our sites, that if we held everyone equally important, we would be able to serve all students well. Thank you very much.